Billy Epler can go for, I cannot tell you his first name, but Yamamoto. Sure. And then, I mean, you see a possibility of a Senga, Quintana, Yamamoto, Burns, and some other person. But like I said, I mean, that's something that they're going to be very invested in this offseason. I don't imagine Epler and Cohen just sitting around. I think they'll be very active in the offseason. But, doesn't matter. They could spend how much money they want. It's who they spend it on. But we'll see how that goes.
We got Nelson in the chat. What up, Nelson? How are
Yeah,
you, man? Nice to see you. We're going to get your thoughts here in a minute on this deal. Obviously, breaking news. We're filling in for Rob. Has some stuff to take care of. But the full trade, the money is unknown still so far. I haven't seen anything about the money. But Drew Gilbert, hitting 241 in AA in the Astros system, their number one prospect, and then Ryan Clifford, their number 4 overall prospect, both outfielders. Clifford is hitting 271 in high A ball with a 903 OPS. So not terrible over there in high A ball. We'll see what happens out of him. But he is not in the MLB's top 100 prospects list. And obviously, like we just said, Drew Gilbert is. So Nelson, what's up, man? How are you? What's the thoughts? I'm curious about this one.
I'm good. I'm happy. I wanted to get younger. I wanted top prospects. We got the number 68 prospect on MLB Pipeline's list. We got Clifford as well. We need outfield prospects. We don't have a lot. We could obviously some of these infielders we got might need to move to the outfield, but I'm happy with it. Yeah, it makes building a rotation for next year a little more difficult. Not that's obvious. That's we have, like Hayden was saying, we have literally 2 guys, and that's if we don't trade Quintana. If not, it's Senga, and then we got 4 spots to fill. So I don't know. I like it. I've liked all the trades they've made. I haven't had a problem with any of these deadline deals. Sure. I mean, it would have been nicer to trade with the Dodgers or the Orioles. My guess is he only wanted to go back to Houston because that was the only. I mean, they kept saying we couldn't agree on the players, but we were still talking to Houston. If we couldn't agree on the players and still talking to Houston, it's only because JV said I'm going to Houston and that's it. So, I mean, granted, you could argue we didn't have to trade him, and I agree with that. But I mean, Drew Gilbert, from everything I've seen about him, read about him, I do know about him before this trade. I like what this kid has. He has a lethal arm. He plays great center or great outfield. I really like him. I think his bat's gonna play. I think he's projected to be up next year sometime too. So he's not years away. I like the deal, man.
I'm not big on the Verlander deal, being honest. I like the guys you got back, but I think you could have gotten a lot more. I think the Mets got fleeced. I mean, my issue is they're getting a prospect back that isn't as high as a guy like Acuna. And that was in the Scherzer trade. Obviously, Verlander, for being the best pitcher on the market. I mean, yeah, I can't really, unless there's anyone else that I'm forgetting, let me know. Listen, if you were to get, if the Mets were to have gotten, what's the guy that we were just talking about a minute ago, the other high prospect, or not prospect, but the other guy that's like
Hunter Brown.
Hunter Brown, yeah. If the Mets got like Hunter Brown and Drew Gilbert, I'm chilling. But considering, I mean, listen, I like these 2 guys back. I think they'll do decent stuff, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not crazy. Listen, I understand they need youth. I get it. I understand they need youth. They need to build. But when it comes down to it, I think, like I said, you're not getting a prospect as high as Acuna. You're getting 2 guys who one's just in the top 100 and one even isn't. I don't know. Like I said, I mean, that's how it goes with farm system prospects. You take a risk, and who knows? In 3 years from now, I can come back and look at this and say, "Damn, Hayden, you look like an idiot." But
interesting tweet
the
here.
reason we might
Hold on, sorry. Anthony DeComo is putting out some great tweets. If you're on Twitter, go look at Anthony DeComo's tweets. I'll just say that, and I'll let Nelson go.
I was gonna say I haven't seen obviously the details on the money situation. The only reason I think maybe we didn't get more is it's possible Houston is paying a good chunk of money on the deal. It's out. I mean, they have to pay 2025 because he's more than likely going to pitch 140 innings or whatever he needs to pitch to get that option to vest, and we're not allowed to pay that. So they have to pay that year. How much they're taking on next year, we'll see. But I'm thinking we did get two players versus for Scherzer. It was a 1-for-1 swap. I think the reason we didn't get a little more is probably because they're taking on a lot more money than the Rangers ended up taking. And look at the Mets; they've completely affected the NL or the AL West race here. Dueling arms for the Astros and Rangers. We'll see how that shakes out.
Hey, so for everyone talking about the numbers in the top 100, I just saw a tweet by Mike Mayer as well. He does some great coverage. Obviously, there's a bunch of different prospects, top 100 prospects list, and the rankings go, they're pretty skewed. This one by quote unquote BP, I'm not sure what that, list is. I'm not sure if you know,
Baseball
Nelson, but Gilbert
prospectus.
is, what was that?
Baseball prospectus. They're very highly regarded.
Okay, and so they have Drew Gilbert at number 36 and Clifford in the 80s in their top 100. So if you're big on the numbers top 100, which I'm not, it doesn't really make a difference to me. That you have one source, Baseball Prospectus, is putting Gilbert at 36 and Clifford in the 80s. So
I stand
that's
corrected on that then. Yeah, no, I thought okay, I stand corrected on that. I thought what's his face? I thought Gilbert was 98. I stand corrected.
Yeah, no, Gilbert in other rankings, Gilbert is as high as 68. So he's anywhere from 38 to 68 based on who you ask and who does the ranking. So in a matter of days, the Mets have now added 4 players in their top 12 in the farm system, and 3 of those being in the top 10 with Vargas, Luis Angel, and now Gilbert. And then I would assume Clifford, if he doesn't crack the top 10, he'll be somewhere 11 or 12. But he also has a shot at cracking the top 10. So we'll see what happens. I get everybody wanted pitching in return, and the Mets did not get many pitching prospects this deadline, and who knows what happens remains to be seen. You could talk about Narvaez, Quintana still potentially working out deals. But listen, I the way to stay competitive, and if they really do want to contend in 2024, is going to be via trade, and we're going to see some trades going down in the offseason and some free agent signings. We've been saying it all live stream going back to last night into today. We have depth now, not only in the outfield, not only in the infield, not only in the catcher spot. It's a good problem to have. And I get it. Everybody in the comments is losing their minds, and I get it, right? This is a
And we
failure
still
of a
haven't
season.
traded Sam.
Oh, and Fam too. There we go. I can't forget about Fam. So we'll see what happens, but it's a good problem to have. This is probably the best outcome of a washed season that you can probably have. Now, the talks about Alonso, that I'm not going to speak on, because if you do trade Alonso, at that point, it will be a rebuild. And Nelson, you might disagree with that. I'm not positive where your stance is on that, but if you get rid of Alonso, I think you're more in rebuild territory. But
Yeah, I don't think
Verlander,
trading Alonso.
yeah, I don't think we're trading Alonso either. But listen, the Mets, it's not the end of the world, is what I'll say. So, yeah, I just wanted to update you all on the prospect rankings in the top 100.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on that. And I see Captain Morgan in the chat. I also agree with what you and Chris were saying, that the Mets didn't get a whole lot of pitching prospects in return. Like I said, who knows? Maybe you'll get something out of Fam or Narvaez. I mean, probably nothing too crazy, but I mean, definitely the progress we've seen in this farm system when it comes to the pitching has been huge. I know that there was this theory, and I'm going to denounce that the Mets don't have any big pitching prospects. Well, now they do. If you were to say that 6 months ago, yeah, I would agree with you. But now that's not really the case. You have 4 or potentially 5, pretty much above adequate arms in the farm system. Obviously, yeah, most of them are in AA, but still a big transition. So you have to see how that goes. But yeah, I guess we'll see how that goes. Like I said, pitching prospects is going to be huge. Because like I said, unless you are going to go in to this offseason and go nuts, that's the only way you can compete next year. Because, I mean, let's be realistic. You're not going to compete with the rotation of Senga, Quintana, Peterson, McGill, and, I mean, they're not going to bring back Carrasco, but whoever else that fifth guy is going to be.
Yeah.
I'm
I
sorry.
could jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Mike Mayer says this is how he would rank the new prospects we have. He has Luisa Angel Acuna at number 1. Drew Gilbert would be number 2. Ryan Clifford 4. Marco Vargas 7. Justin Jarvis 16. Ronald Hernandez 18. Coleman Crowe 22. And Landon Marceau at 33. That's
Clifford at 4 is pretty surprising to me. I thought he would have been closer to that 10 range, and him being ahead of Marco Vargas is a little bit surprising. So, like, everyone gets enamored by these prospect rankings, and it's a different case depending on who you talk to. That's why I never get into that. I'm more in terms of objectively identifying this talent. I know, and people are saying it in the chat, these guys can certainly be busts. Nelson, you weren't here earlier in the live stream when I was talking to Rob about the Nationals when they had those 2 blockbuster deals go down. They received basically crap for Scherzer and Trey Turner, which ended up being, Ruiz and Josiah Gray, but then they hit a home run on the Soto and Bell deal that returned them Mackenzie Gore and Abrams. So, like I said, the more you stack in terms of quantity of prospects, especially in that top 10, the more likely you're going to hit on them. So the Mets are doing right. And like I said, I'd rather be in this position than what the Yankees are doing right now in that half sell, half buy mode. They don't know what
I
to do. The
agree.
pod well. So I think Rob said it perfectly when I was on stream. I think before Hayden came in a little bit earlier, that if you're a fan of a team at a deadline like this where you're in limbo and you don't know what the future holds, or I should say what the rest of the season holds, you want them to go all in either one way or the other. Do not do what the Mets did in 2022 and sort of half-ass the trade deadline. And I'm really happy that they decided to go full sell mode and go that route. Now, yeah, you could talk about maybe a little bit of underwhelming return, remains to be seen. I think the guys we got out of Verlander are serviceable. We probably could have got a little bit better of a return from the Orioles, from the Dodgers, like Nelson said, but it is what it is at this point. I want to see how much money the Mets save from this Verlander deal coming off the books for next season's payroll. That should help. And like I said, this is not going to impact whether the Mets are contenders or not. But I think people are giving their rash reactions right now, and it's certainly understandable. But at the end of the day, these guys, like, I'm excited for what we've got going in the future. And Anthony DeComo tweeted out who left the Mets organization via trade so far versus who we got in. And that's a nice little haul that the Mets have gotten. So I'm excited about it personally. And I can't speak for anybody else, but personally, I think that this is a good problem or good situation that the Mets put themselves in.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree too. I mean, given all things considered, where we were going into this deadline, I mean, I've said it for a while. I probably got to maybe take it a little bit with a grain of salt from me because I was really on the sell trade train and I really wanted this to happen. So it was going to take a lot for me not to be happy. But I mean, I could judge it objectively too. And if we got crap, I'll call it like it is. And I just don't feel like I feel like we got some really decent pieces, and not all of them are going to be here in the majors. Most of them will probably get either traded or some of them may not pan out. But I just think you have enough talent now that it puts you in a position where you can have flexibility to make a lot of different moves.
Listen, I'll put this out there. If you use some of the prospects that we got in this haul, this trade deadline, let's say we go out and sign, a couple free agent pitchers, and the pitching situation is, you know, it's replaceable. So you get a good off-season deal for some rotation arms via free agency, maybe a trade here and there, whether it's an ace or whether it's, you know, a mid-rotation guy. If we use some of these excess pieces to get Juan Soto from the Padres, is anybody going to complain? I don't think anybody's going to complain.
And I think that is a big reason, and I've said this a lot, and I think it's a big reason why the Mets should continue to stack their farm system. Doesn't matter the position. If you want to have 5 shortstop prospects, go for it. Because I don't know if you were on here, Chris. You may have not been. But before I stated that, you know, everyone's like, oh, Jet Williams is a shortstop. What are you going to do with him? Ronnie Mauricio is a shortstop. What are you going to do with him? It's a good problem to have. Like you said, Chris, that's a good problem to have, a stacked and loaded farm system. Because those guys can play other positions. They're young. You could develop them into a second baseman, an outfielder, a DH. Or you could trade them. We've discussed Corbin Burns. We've discussed, other baseball players. You could use those in trades and not hurt your farm system. I mean, if you look at it, let's say the Mets did buy this trade deadline, just hypothetically. Let's say they bought, and let's say they went after a John Doe, I don't know, some random player. You would have had to given up a Mauricio potentially. You would have had to given up a couple top tier prospects, and then what would you have been left with? I mean, Jesus Baez and Jose Budo. So I think that is the biggest thing to note there. Is that you're not going to do anything this season. So that's the route the Mets are going to take, and some could agree, some could disagree, whatever. But I think you go into the offseason, that is when they will have to act, is they will, you know, whether it's Burns, whether it's, I don't know, whoever other guys, like I said, the starting pitching free agent market is a lot of 4 or 5 guys. Julio Urias, interesting candidate. I think the Mets could get him. Sonny Gray's an interesting guy. He's having a career here. I saw someone just mention him in the chat before. But otherwise, like I said, you need depth. Depth is important, and I think the Mets, like I said, the ball's in Cohen and Epler's court this offseason. They could pretty much starting pitching and bullpen. And I think by building a farm system, they're able to trade for those arms and get the guys they need. So, yeah, I agree with that.
Mets will be in good shape, I'm telling you, come this offseason. They got President Baseball Operations coming in. The reason they didn't buy heavily in 2022, I know a lot of people are pissed about that, because you're going to have to give up the Alex Ramirez's, the Ronnie Mauricio's to get what in return in that 2022 deadline, really. Let's be honest. So I think that this is just a perfect storm, to be honest with you. With what they did last deadline was a little bit of a sneak peek in terms of what they were going to do in terms of prospect stacking. So, I mean, listen, guys, I get it. We're going to have to sit through Lucchesi, Carrasco, Peterson, McGill in the second half of the season. We will. That's undoubtedly true, and I get the frustrations with that. But we get to watch 2 months of that, and then we get to look forward to the prospects. You know, once the World Series champions get crowned this season, it's going to be an off-season grind, like Hayden just said. So, listen, I don't think this is the end of the world. It's going to suck up front. Hayden, you and I know football season's fastly approaching. We'll use our time to sort of waste our time and have some fun there. But yeah, man, the Mets are going to be fine. This Verlander deal, it was a win-win. I said this last night on the live stream. It was a win-win for the Mets. And guess what? They won. And maybe they didn't win in terms of what everybody expected the Mets to get out. I think that's the key disappointment here. But Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford, they're both in the top 100, right? And we have now depth in the outfield behind Alex Ramirez in the farm system. And like you just said, Mike Mayer ranking both those guys in the top 5 of the Mets farm system. So yeah, man, I'm excited, and we'll see what happens. And yeah, that's all I can say. But I really want to see the money that's going to the Astros, because that's what's going to make or break my sort of rash analysis on this, because I want to see what sort of compensation, because that Verlander contract is a wacky one, so that's going to be hard to figure out the numbers on that.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything out there yet as far as those numbers. It will be interesting to see. And listen, I mean, you can't argue it's going to be hard to build a whole new rotation next year. Maybe we don't. It doesn't pan out, and we don't sign as many guys as we think. I know some fans would be pretty upset if we're not competing next year, but if it sets us up for 2025, and we can get Soto in here or get some of these kids that are ready to contribute at the major league level, I'm okay with that too. Like we needed youth. I relying on these old guys just wasn't. I wasn't excited about it. It was tough. It was an uphill battle with doing that. You're just constantly worried if they're going to get hurt. They're just not the same pitchers that they were. I mean, you still got some older dudes on this team. Like we're stuck with Marte. He's basically falling apart. So we'll see how that works out for next year. There's still time. There's still moves to be made too. Well, we'll see what happens. I want to see what we get out of Pham. Is there a surprise deal to be made with some other guy? I did read that report that we were considering trading controllable pieces. I don't think that Pete is that guy, but who knows? Does that mean McNeil? I mean, I'd be happy with that. But I don't know. I don't know who they're. Sounds like Billy's got all the options open, and he's gonna do whatever he thinks is necessary to retool this team to what they envision for whatever the future is that they got. I don't know. It's just the options are wide open, and I kind of like that. I kind of like that if Stearns does come in, he's kind of got a clean slate, and he can just pick and choose what he wants to do. He's not stuck with Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer and guys like that. He has a blank slate, and he has a rotation he can build however way he sees fit. So
I'm curious because I see a lot of people in the comments are angry about, stuff that's happening this season. Like, I get being frustrated with the return for Verlander. That's one thing. But if you were mad at what happened with Max Scherzer in that deal and you wanted the Mets to buy this trade deadline, I'm sorry I can't help you in changing your mind. But I'm going to say that would be a little bit foolish. There's no way that this Mets team, even with buying at this deadline, would have been in any sort of contention for a World Series this year. And so if you're legitimately mad about getting rid of a guy like Robertson or Scherzer. Verlander's a different story. I know we're talking Verlander, but Robertson and Scherzer for sure, and the returns that they got out of those guys, then I really can't help you there. Those moves 100%. We can debate the Verlander thing all day, but that's what I'm going to say.
Little development. Hate to be the burden of bad news, but Tigers are close to trading Michael Lorenzen to the Phillies.
We'll see what happens.
We're not competing anyway. Like? So what do I care if the Phillies got better?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I just think everyone's kind of upset and pissed off right now that, the Mets season is, well, I mean, it's been over since May, but I think people are kind of just upset that the season is kind of, pretty much nail in the coffin on August 1st or even before August, pretty much right now. I mean, it is what it is. Like I said, like Chris said, and like everyone else is saying, just finish off the rest of this year and you'll go into the offseason. And I mean, you better hope and pray that, Cohen and Epler and this front office just goes nuts. And that they can compete next year. Because otherwise, if they're going to go in to this offseason and, I don't want to say be a little bit, relaxed and slow, but if that's the case, well, see you 2025 or 2026, but they got to go off. And then that'll get, I think Mets fans are upset, but, once the offseason comes and Epler goes off and Stearns comes in or whoever, then I think Mets fans will be more happy right now. I just think fans are very upset. This team had high expectations by no means. And I mean, they're probably going to lose 90 games. We could see Rob's back. Maybe not.
Looks like Rob's driving.
I was gonna say he's picking up his cat, but maybe that's the curse of the cat. But like I said, we'll see.
Listen, man, if the front office does not go all in this offseason, I will change my stance and I'll be mad, but I'll give them till the offseason to do what they got to do. And I'll reserve my judgments based off of that. But for right now, this is a win until further notice for me.
Yeah. Like I said, we'll see. I mean, prospects are just, prospects are those are just, those guys that, they could pan out, they cannot pan out. Like I said, we'll be sitting here probably in 2025 and 2026, and we'll have more of a definitive answer on, how did this day, August 1st, 2023, actually turn out for us.
Agreed. Rob, what's the status, man? We need to hear what your thoughts are on this Verlander. Give us a comprehensive, and then we want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I don't think I'm mad about the return because I think no, I just posted it on Twitter.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Rob. Are you on mute?
Say, can't really hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
All right, sorry about that. I think my microphone was blocked. All right. So, can you hear me guys good?
Yep. Loud and clear.
So, what I don't think the Met fans. I said it on Twitter. Only Met fans can be mad about getting a number 1 and number 4 overall prospect in the team system. But I think they're more. I think they're just more mad at the fact of down the road, 2024. Who is in this rotation? Now, I keep on saying this, and I get ridiculed all the time. I do believe that Epler and Cohen know more about what Ohtani actually wants than everybody else knows. I don't think they're doing all this knowing that they have no shot at Ohtani. And I know that sounds crazy, but I don't think Cohen's that stupid to allow this to happen. Because even if you sign Urias and sign Yamamoto, what are you doing? Like is that good enough? I don't know. So I think they know more about Ohtani and his desire to be on the East Coast, and it doesn't matter. It's just a matter of he wants the most money because one, it's going to help more pitches down the road. I don't know, but I just feel like that's what I think. I think that these trades, it's not a coincidence. These trades happened not even 2 days before the Angels took Ohtani off the table. And I think that was a big eye-opener to the Mets because they thought he was going to get traded, and wherever he got traded, he wasn't leaving. And I think that was a big reason why they decided to make these moves now. Because only 2 days later, they traded Scherzer. 4 days later, they traded Scherzer and Verlander. That's the only thing I can think of.
I want to point out this comment by Captain Morgan. The Mets, and we'll get to what Heyman just tweeted. Actually, I'll say what Heyman just tweeted. Mets still working on deals after Verlander, Pham, Rayleigh being discussed. Narvaez could go too. So Mets are not going to be done today. I fully expect more trades, even outside of Pham, to happen. I think Narvaez is a good option to leave. We'll see about Rayleigh. But this comment from Captain Morgan is something that is 100% accurate. And I know there's this whole tampering thing with David Stearns or whatnot. You can't really talk to him before, he comes off the books of the Brewers or whatnot. But the thing is that the Mets, this is a good comment, Captain Morgan, shout out you. The Mets are wiping the financial ledger as clean as possible for David Stearns, who's expected to be hired as the Pobo this offseason. And I think that's 100% accurate. They are giving David Stearns full reign when he becomes the Pobo, and they don't want to give him what the last regime, aka Billy Epler, right? What he provided for this team. And start young, start fresh, get the extra expenses out the way that you save for Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, and give David Stearns a nice, clean, fresh slate and not inheriting a mess to go back to from the 2023 season. So I think that's a good comment. I think it's pretty accurate. So we'll see if the Mets truly are going to commit to 2024. I think they will. And until they prove me wrong, That's just what I think. But I think that this is a clean slate for David Stearns. I think it's a good thing too.
I think one of the reasons fans are, not every fan, but a lot of fans are upset too, and maybe a little bit shell shocked. I can't think, even in my lifetime, of another time that the Mets went into a trade deadline and tore it all down like this. Like, they've made little moves here and there. They've traded a couple guys, but never have they gone and traded two guys at the top of their rotation, a closer, a starting outfit. Like, this is a lot for one team to trade off in 1 year. And I think it's a little bit of a shell shock. And obviously, we had a lot of expectations. Nobody wants to lose. Some people do see that we're only 6 games back and are like wondering what we're doing. But if you really think about it, this team was never good enough to compete. They would have had to buy a lot to fix their problems. And I don't think, given that the goal has always been to build the farm system, trading away pieces to build onto a mediocre baseball team wasn't the way to go. So they decided, we're going to tear it down. I know it's tough to swallow. Not everybody's going to be happy, but I mean, I kind of saw the writing on the wall for a while, and I expected. I didn't expect this much, to be honest. I would have never thought they would have traded both of them. I thought maybe one, but I like it. I like the idea of giving Stearns a blank slate. I like the idea of opening up more money for next year, whether that be for Ohtani or whoever else. And the idea of having lots of pieces that you could potentially trade off for a Burns or a Cease or whoever else may come available, because you don't know who might be available in the offseason. So I'm happy with it, but I understand fans that are upset. I understand the opposing view as well. It's not like I don't get it.
Anthony DeComo taking a stand on Twitter right now. "Quote unquote, those who reject this strategy will dislike this deal no matter what I say. I've been called worse than a homer. Those taking a long-term view can see that the Mets just achieved a years-long rebuild over the course of a week. Some short-term pain to avoid a much worse slog," he says. So, yeah, I mean, Anthony DeComo giving his thoughts on this deadline. He just said it. 2 years, maybe even 3, takes you to build those prospects in the farm that we just got in the course of a week. So just don't ignore that fact. Either way, whichever stance you take, just don't ignore that fact. And that's right from Anthony DeComo himself.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think I overall think that just fans are upset. Like I said, whether you're what are they, like 6 games out of the wild card, 5 games under 500. I guess the thing is, each team has a different approach and a different I guess just a different approach on how they want to handle the deadline. I mean, and it's crazy to say this, but 2-3 games really determine if a team in general is going to buy or sell. Look at the Cubs. I read this on Twitter 10 days ago. The Mets and Cubs had the same exact record. I think they were both 8 games under. Now the Cubs went on like a 7-game win streak, and they're over 500, and they're buying, and they're going to go for it. Where a team like the Mets had a similar stretch. I think they went 7-3 or something like that. And they're whatever the term you want to use for this deadline. So yeah, I mean, it's really crazy. I mean, it goes to show you. I mean, I could select a handful of games from this Mets season, and if they won those games, would they have went all in? I don't really, and I agree with Nelson. I don't really think this is the roster right now to even, even if you still have Robertson and Scherzer and Verlander, I still don't even think that roster was a playoff. They would have got their ass beat against Atlanta. They would have got whooped, swept, everything. This bullpen, forget about it. I mean, your starter goes 5 innings, your bullpen will give up 10 runs. So yeah, I mean, like I said, and I think it's interesting that you bring up the point of how hard it is to really build a farm system. I mean, the Mets, I couldn't tell you what they were last year at this time, but they weren't that high in the farm system. I mean, outside of Alvarez, Vientos, Beatty, and Mauricio, you had a good 4, and then, 5 to 30 was, we'll see. So the fact is that this farm system is going to be loaded. I wouldn't be surprised if they're a top 3, top 5 farm system this offseason. You see teams like the Mariners, like the Marlins. Say we want about the Mariners this season, but these teams are coming out, after having really good farm systems. So, yeah, we'll see with the Mets. I mean, I hope, like I said, I don't know how many of these guys are going to have an impact for next year. They could have an impact in terms of getting people. I think that could be the direct impact, like people saying, oh, this guy isn't ready until 2026. Yeah, but maybe you could trade him and get something out of him so they do have an impact. So he could serve a purpose to some extent. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of just really at a loss of words. I mean, like Nels said, I mean, 21 years old. I couldn't tell you the last time I saw the Mets get rid of 2 top-tier pitchers, their closer. And, like I said, I don't really think this is a rebuild. Like people are saying rebuild. Rebuild is if they would get rid of Lindor, Alonso. Listening, every team's going to listen. Like I said, teams have listened on Aaron Judge in the past. Teams have listened on Ronald Acuna Jr. in the past. Teams have listened on Derek Jeter in the past. This would be a rebuild if the Mets get rid of guys that are here long-term. Regardless of performance, McNeil, Nimmo, Lindor, Diaz, I would say Alonso too. Any of those guys go, yeah, I think every fan would probably have the right to boycott next season. And, like I said, Cohen can build all the chicken sandwiches and scoreboards he wants, but if you want to fill those stands, I mean, otherwise you're going to be competing with Oakland for the attendance. But
something you gotta remember too is the guys we traded, and to your point that this isn't a rebuild. These are 40-year-old pitchers we're trading here. These aren't young guys. Like these are guys that are in the twilight of their careers. Yeah, they were signed for another year or two, but this isn't like we're trading our 30-year-old ace. We're trading 40-year-old pitchers that, let's be honest, are on the downside of their careers and they're pitching worse. Even though Verlander had pitched a little better, they're all pitching worse than they have. Robertson was maybe at his peak, but he's a reliever. He's a guy you can re-sign next year. So I don't know. Just something to keep in mind. Like we're not trading like young in their prime players here. We're trading old vets that didn't work out for us, and now we stocked up our farm system. And you're right, it's probably going to be a top 5 system in all of baseball. I'd imagine, for sure.
Yeah. And not only that, Nelson, not only are you trading these guys who are past their primes anyways, maybe Verlander is a little bit closer to what he, usually is than Scherzer, is for sure. But you traded them to the American League anyway, so they're not going to haunt you like they would if you traded them, to like a San Fran or to like the Dodgers or the Braves. So, listen, man, I get it. People are mad, but yeah, besides the Dodgers, maybe the Orioles, the Marlins, what other farm systems are competing with the Mets right now as it currently stands with all these prospects coming in? I can't think of maybe only past a handful of organizations. And the depth, not only just having that top 5, but the depth behind, that 5th spot in your pipeline. And Hayden said it last year, it was only those top 4 or 5 guys. And now we have a breadth of, just a compiling list. I think you can make a strong case 1 through 12, 1 through 13 is going to be a serviceable, whether it's, getting called up to the major league team whenever they're ready or being used in trade. These guys are useful 1 through 13, not just 1 through 4 or 5 anymore. So it's important. It's really important. And like everyone's saying in the comments, 100%, this plain and simple, this season was a disaster for the New York Mets. 100%. 100%. But there's a way to salvage a disaster season, and it wasn't a disaster because of the trade deadline. It was a disaster before the trade deadline. So that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, the season ended in May.
Exactly.
Before anyone else goes, I do have to jump off here. Again, appreciate you guys. Chris, I'll see you in a little over an hour for our little show. But hang in there, everybody. It'll be okay. I promise. Let's go, Mets. Thanks again, guys.
Take care, Nelson.
See you, Nelson. Yeah, we're gonna be going live on our channels at 5 o'clock to cover the last hour of the deadline too. So yeah, we'll be go ahead doing that. And I just got a report, the tweet here from Joel Sherman. Some teams are interested in some catchers as well. Rays, Diamondbacks, and Marlins looking at catchers. So Rangers as well. So we'll see. And the Rangers, I think Jonah Heim's their catcher, right? If I'm not mistaken. But I mean, a backup catcher like Narvaez could land in one of those teams' laps as well. So we'll monitor that situation as well.
Yeah. Guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So, I know people are talking about like, oh, how are you going to fill a rotation next year? And do Mets fans forget only a year ago that for 13 weeks out of the season last year, the Mets did not have one ace in their rotation, with DeGrom out for the half a season and the oblique injury by Scherzer? Most solid starter, Chris Bassett, right? He was basically our de facto ace. Everybody else was probably best the number 4 and number 5 starter. Peterson, McGill, Walker, Carrasco. That's how the Mets won last year. Did we all forget that? And when fans, I see it on Twitter, like, how are you filling the rotation? The Mets won 101 games without Scherzer and Verlander, Scherzer and DeGrom for 13 weeks last year. So it doesn't take a top of the line rotation to win anything. It comes down to the people that you expect in your lineup and in your bullpen to do the job to do it, right? We relied so much last year on Peterson and McGill last year, and that was one of the big reasons why we won a lot of games as well, along with giving Bassett getting a solid start from him every single time. That's the way I see it. Maybe I'm crazy and an idiot, I guess, but that's the way I see it.
No, and that point as well. M Easy in the comments said that a little bit ago. He said, he's tired of the Mets, investing in these pitchers, long-term expensive contracts for pitchers when the new era of baseball seems to be starters going 5 innings, maybe even 4, and your bullpen has to take over. Get those mid-level bullpen arms, spend money on that. And then we'll see what the starters can go. Obviously, it's better and it's more ideal for a starter to go 6 or 7. We saw that with the Mets record when starters went 6 or 7 versus not. But it's not necessary. To your point, last year they won a bunch of games without those top starters there, mixing and matching with injuries and all that good stuff. So shout out Cal Stone over here as well. People go crazy for teams that are young / homegrown. Look at the 1986 Mets. The 2006 Mets led with Wright and Reyes. The 2015 Mets with the vaunted starting rotation. He said the Mets are going to be a terrific mix of young and homegrown starting in 2024. It's exciting. I think that's a great take. That's a great take by Cal Stone. So definitely agree with that notion.
Yeah, I agree. Just so everybody knows, I'm probably going to end the stream at 4 o'clock only because I want people in my stream to go to the Interstate Report, Mets Report, with Chris and Nelson. I want to go over to them, subscribe to their channels. I think you had enough of me, definitely. I mean, you guys are sick of me by now. I get that, and that's understandable. So at 4, how about we just say our final thoughts? I'll end the stream, and then Chris and Nelson can work on their own stream and do what they got to do, and Hayden can find another hat to wear on the next stream. How about that? Since we are all very upset.
Works with me.
All right, so okay, guys. Hayden, you want to start with your final thoughts?
So yeah, Mets talk with Hayden. Yeah, I mean, came on this stream and I was somewhat happy, and now I am pretty, I guess, upset is the term to use. But you know what? I think every Met fan is upset. It's nothing new. While Mets still exists in 2023. Yeah, I mean, otherwise, we saw a couple moves, a couple trades. Obviously, so far the subtractions that we've seen have been David Robertson, Max Scherzer. And then obviously now Justin Verlander. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It is how it goes. Sometimes they're bad, but hey, when they win it all, it's times like this that make it feel a lot better. So, like I said, I'm really kind of at a loss of words. I'm not really sure what to say, but like I said, that is true. I'm never happy. I guess like I said, we'll see how it goes. I wouldn't be surprised if Narvaez, Pham, and that's really it. I mean, unless I'm blanking anyone on that's big, but really Narvaez and Pham are probably the only two guys that I think will go. Maybe Rayleigh and maybe Ottavino, but that's max. And yeah, like I said, almost hitting 4:00 here on the East Coast. So I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm 1 subscriber away from 100. So if someone can please subscribe, I would really appreciate that. Let's get to 800 subscribers. At least that could make me happy. But yeah, it was great coming on here, Rob, Chris, and Nelson. And yeah, let's go Mets. Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. I said it a lot in 2021. I'm going to say it now. Raging is the game. I'm probably going to have to bring back the rages. Rob knows my historical rages. Those were pretty legendary in 2021.
Yes.
Frank the Tank style. So yeah, I love GM. Let's go Mets. And let's go Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills.
Chris, your final thought.
I appreciate it. I haven't seen one of Hayden's rages just yet, but hopefully maybe that's in the works, so we'll see. But yeah, no, I appreciate it. This is a great live. I enjoyed doing this with you, the Roundtable podcast as well. Always a good time with Hayden, Nelson, and Rob, first and foremost. Yeah, at CPNY Sports, I streamed the other segment of this live to my audience. I didn't get a chance to do that here on this one, but always appreciate it. We'll be going live at 5 p.m. for the Interstate Mets Report. But yeah, you guys are great. This coverage is the best. We'll see what sort of deals the Mets can strike between now and 6 o'clock. Rob, I'm sure, we'll see some more content from you as well, whether it's in the stream or maybe a short or whatnot. So always looking out for your stuff. I appreciate the opportunity to be up here with you guys. You guys do, some of the best work I've seen, especially in the YouTube game. So keep doing what you're doing. And, until the next time, whenever we're able to get back on with one another, whether it's the roundtable or just another impromptu live, just let me know.
Absolutely, guys. So great job by Nelson and Chris, especially last night, holding it down for me while I was trying to get 2 hours of sleep. They did a great job. Hayden, of course, always popping on to my channel, helping me out. So listen, guys, the Mets got younger. The Mets built a farm system, top 10 farm system in a week, as DeComo said. Listen, it is what it is at this point. Enjoy the rest of the year. Just see the young kids play. Let's see what we get from this team. Maybe a couple of top prospects might surprise us, and just see what happens in the offseason. I think the Mets are going to make a big trade. I said Corbin Burns, and I think they are going to go for Ohtani. I think this is the big reason why they traded Scherzer and Verlander. So at this point, just enjoy the rest of the season as much as you can. There's no stress anymore as a Mets fan, right? You got 2 months of stress-free baseball. Enjoy it, because you're going to be stressed out next year, guaranteed. So with that said, Nelson, Hayden, Chris, thank you so much for tuning in and this whole damn marathon that I'd probably never do again. So everybody have a great day. Have a great night. Enjoy the last 2 hours of the deadline. And let's go Mets, guys. Have a great night, guys.
Let's go
Mets.